Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining today's webinar on Insight Works. Presenting today, we have Mark Hamlin, so a huge thank you to him for being here today. If you have any questions, please make sure to type those out in the chat window and we'll answer those at the end. And also, I just want to let you know that this is being recorded, so you'll be getting that recording emailed to you in the next few days or so. And with that being said, I will hand things over to you, Mark.
Great, thanks, Allie. All right, good afternoon or morning, I guess, in some places to everybody. Today, what we're going to do is go through a little bit of time tracking and production scheduling for Business Central. So the session will likely take about 30 to 45 minutes. And again, ask any questions you like in the GoToWebinar chat window there or a question box, and we'll get to those at the end. Now, just really briefly about Insight Works. We've been around for about 10 years or so. We work with TM Group to deliver these types of solutions for Business Central and Nav if you're running the older versions as well. So if you have any questions about what we go through today afterwards, contact Allie or the people at TM Group and they'll be able to help you out. All right, that was very brief, but let's talk about what you're here to see today, which are really the extensions that we have available for Business Central to allow you to work with manufacturing or leverage the production capabilities within Business Central a little more effectively. So this is sort of all the products that we have available, all the add-ons we have available for Business Central. But what we're going to be focusing on today is sort of these first three. So Shop Floor Insight is really a manufacturing execution system. I'll get into that in a little more detail here in a moment. And it can do a whole bunch of good stuff. MxAPS is an advanced planning and scheduling solution. That's what that APS is for. And it allows you to generate the schedule for your facility automatically. So without really any, human interaction, it'll figure out, based on your material and your capacity, all those sorts of things, it'll generate an executable schedule. We'll talk about that again in a few seconds. Advanced Planning Worksheet, we'll go through a brief demo of that today. But that's, if you're running the standard MRP within Business Central, this really just enhances it, as it says there. So it has a number of capabilities like demand forecasting. It's got better purchasing logic if you're purchasing for sort of distribution. And it has a number of enhancements to the standard planning worksheet that just makes it so much easier to use to do your planning. So those are the three things that we'll really cover off today. But I will briefly give you an overview of some of these other products. Now, you can get all the information you want from the website or again, ask TM Group. They'll be able to help you out if you have questions on these. But if you're running Business Central Cloud, there's a few free tools you can use like the print node connector. So if you need to do, printing to remote printers or your local printers on the network, you can use this. It's free. You can install it. And you'll be able to print, for example, if you want to post an order, you can print the invoice to one printer, the packing slip to another printer, the pick ticket to another printer, those types of things. Print node connector lets you sort of do that unattended or non-interactive printing. So that's a good guy. Doc Extender is another nice tool. It's again free. You can install it from AppSource. And what that allows you to do is drag and drop documents into Business Central. And that'll either attach in Business Central or upload it to your SharePoint site. So it's really a good document management tool. And again, it's completely free. Install it and away you go. A couple of the others here are WMS Express on the topic of free tools. WMS Express is free as well. If you need to use a handheld device to be able to receive inventory, to pick inventory, to do inventory counts, those types of things, you can do all of that with WMS Express. And again, it's a free tool, install from AppSource and away you go. If you want the big brother to that, that's Warehouse Insight. So if you need a full WMS for Business Central, you can use that and it's got a lot more capabilities, but basically the same idea. Let's use mobile devices to manage your inventory. All right, with that said, let's dive in and look at some of the production capabilities. So Shop Floor Data Collection or Shop Floor Insight is the actual product name. What that allows you to do, if you were to summarize it in really one sentence, barcoded labor collection is really, its key purpose. But it does a lot more. I mentioned it's a full manufacturing execution system when you tie it in with Business Central. So that means it can capture quality, it can do consumption, it can do output, it can do all those sorts of things you need to do from the shop floor to properly manage your environment. And so here's some of the capabilities of the solution. So it does have time and attendance and payroll integration and things like that. So what that allows you to do is, if you have a punch clock today, you can have employees, instead of using that existing punch clock, they could punch into Shop Floor Insight, and all that information is recorded in Business Central in real time. So there's no separate database or anything like that. Everything is stored in Business Central. You have full access to that information that's happening out on the shop floor in real time in Business Central. And that time and attendance is part of that. So you can see who's on shift, who showed up, who didn't. When they're done their shift, you can calculate their overtime, on a daily or weekly basis, and then summarize that and send it out to your payroll solution. So that's a big savings potentially in manpower. But that time and attendance stuff is optional. It comes with it. You can use it or not if you like. Really, the stuff below it is everything we do sort of from an execution perspective. So again, the barcoded labor collection, but we also have the ability to capture, labor and that type of information without using barcodes. So if you want to go paperless in the shop, that sort of thing, we have that capability as well, which I'll show you. And then there's a whole bunch of other stuff like quality inspections and all sorts of things that we can do in here that we'll get into in the demo. This graphical scheduler is, I didn't mention on the previous one, but that is also available as a free tool as well, or will be within a few weeks. It hasn't gone through the submission process on Business Central yet, but by the end of summer of 2020, you will have access to that free graphical scheduler as well. But it's also built into Shop Floor Insight, and the Shop Floor Insight version has a number of additional bells and whistles. So we'll talk about how you can use a graphical scheduler as well. Now that graphical scheduler, that's really a manual thing. I come in and I want to move stuff around. I want to evaluate the schedule and drag and drop and all that kind of stuff. That's great. If that's a fit for your facility, that's awesome. If, however, you have a very complex environment with way too many orders to possibly manually schedule, or you've got too many constraints like material and capacity and electricity pricing, or whatever kinds of constraints you have to consider when you generate the schedule, you probably want something more like MxAPS. So MxAPS, again, you throw all that data at it, it'll crunch all the numbers, and it'll spit out a schedule that you can actually execute, right? So it takes into account your labor, your machine availability, your material availability, all of those sorts of things, and gives you a good schedule all automatically. Okay, so MxAPS, again, normally best for larger environments or environments that have very complex scheduling requirements where you just can't possibly manage scheduling manually. This is definitely a good tool to look at. All right, that said, let's talk more about the shop floor data collection. And when we talk about shop floor data collection, obviously you're in the shop floor collecting data. You need hardware out there. You need a terminal out there to collect that information. And so there's a number of different options. So normally what we have is we have fixed terminals out on the shop floor. These are things that you put out there where people will walk up to that terminal and ideally scan barcodes to record what the heck they're doing. And so those terminals can be, old PCs. If you've got a closet full of old PCs, you can throw them out on the shop floor, use them. You can use thin client computers like Chromeboxes, stick PCs. We also see people using Chromebooks, right? The little laptops. Ideally ones with no moving parts so the fans don't get clogged up, those types of things. Really what we need out there is a screen for you to interact with and enter information into. Tablets are an optional choice. We normally don't recommend tablets because the screen size is a little too small. You don't get the value out of the system if you're working on a smaller screen size like that. Normally we want nice big screens that people can interact with, and you'll see why when we get into the demo. But it is possible. When we talk about tablets though, currently iOS, so the iPads aren't supported. The browser on iPads doesn't support what we actually need for the system. So Android or Windows tablets, if you're doing a thin client computer, it could be anything from a Raspberry Pi all the way up to a full Windows machine, whatever you like, as long as it can run a modern browser. All right, so that's a little on the hardware options. Here's an example of an actual station in a shop. This one they built, they fabbed a little case around it, but it's a Dell monitor running a little thin client computer, and this thing, when this picture was taken, that had been in use for over 10 years. You can see all the dust on the little keyboard there and everything else, but that's the type of station we'd use. And you notice it's got this little barcode scanner. If you're doing barcoded labor collection, that's the type of scanner you'd use. So a setup like this without the case is maybe a few $100s for the monitor, the terminal, and that sort of thing. So that's typically what we'd use, and people would walk up to that to scan their information. Now, you want as many of those out on the shop floor as possible. You don't want people walking, 60 feet to say I'm starting work on something, but you don't need one at every station necessarily if you don't want. All right, so that's a little bit on the hardware and everything else. Now that's all I wanted to cover on the presentation. I'll just leave this slide up just before we get into the demo. If you have any questions, you can contact TM Group, you can contact us. There's a bunch of links here. If you need more information, you can go to Shop Floor for Dynamics, Scheduling for Dynamics, those sorts of things, and get more detail on what we're talking about. All right. Now, we're about to jump into the demo, so I'm just going to briefly give you an overview of the type of barcodes that I'll be scanning. So the one on the left here, these are employee badges. So these are generated right from Business Central, and you can get all fancy. We have a kit that'll print, color, ID badges on a plastic, like a real ID badge that people can use for other purposes. Or if you have existing ID badges, you can just print the barcode, stick it on an existing badge. If you print this thing, you can do whatever you like as far as layout, stick it in a clip-on badge holder, and that's what the employees are going to use to identify themselves to the system. Over on the right is a production order traveler. So this is the sample one that ships with the product. You can tailor this to your needs or just take the barcodes off this and put it on an existing traveler you already like. But if we're doing barcoded labor collection, this is what we want out on the shop floor. A barcode for setup time, a barcode for run time. That's what people scan to indicate what they're working on. Now this happens to be a production order. We also support jobs. So if you're using jobs for manufacturing, that's fine too. We can do jobs, production orders, service orders, fixed assets, non-productive codes, all of that we can scan into the shop floor interface. Okay, but I'll be focusing on production orders today. All right, with that, let's jump in and see what the system looks like. Before I start doing that scanning that you're desperately hoping to see, I'm briefly going to talk about that enhanced planning worksheet I mentioned earlier. And this will be available for Business Central again fairly shortly. So I am actually running in the Business Central Cloud version here, running the enhanced planning worksheet. And so this will be available from AppSource for you to install. And what the enhanced planning worksheet does is it gives you the ability to get a lot more information about what you're planning. So the standard Business Central planning worksheet looks pretty much exactly like this with a slightly different fact box. And it's fairly basic. If it's telling me, you need to buy or make 3 of these, I don't necessarily know why. With the enhanced planning worksheet, I've got all the detail, the supply demand profile over here, the ins and outs, all of that kind of stuff. I can see other locations. If I've got multiple locations where I might decide I want to transfer it from this location instead of, manufacture it at my location, those sorts of things. If you want to do vendor planning, so you get prepaid freight after a certain purchase level by dollar amount or weight. It handles all of that as well. So it's got a lot of good information over here. And in addition to that, down here, we can come in and we can see things, a little more graphically. So here's my history from, in a graphical view where I can see what I've bought, what I've sold, all those sorts of things. Or if I want to see it in a tabular view, I can see the same ins and outs, in a more of a list view. Look at supply demand. So this is my profile, what I'm planning, what the forecast is, what I'm buying, all of those sorts of things are here. And one of the nicest things about this is, this is telling me I need 22 of these. Well, why is that? If I go to planning, I can look at the details and come in and make any adjustments here that I might want to make, right? So I can change the min-maxes, all of that sort of thing on the fly without having to drill down into the item card or the stock keeping unit or anything else. So it does enhance the ability for planners to work. I mean, this could save you an easy hour a day minimum of time, depending on how long it actually takes you to run MRP within Business Central. So it's a nice little planning tool that's available as well. And it does come with a forecasting demand forecasting capability where it'll forecast your sales based on your sales history. So that uses the Cortana machine learning stuff. It'll go out and it'll give you a monthly, weekly, yearly forecast based on your past history through that machine learning stuff. All right, so just wanted to cover off that real quick. But what we want to focus on today is really how do we execute production once we've run through the planning worksheet and everything else, and maybe even the MxAPS scheduler to generate a schedule. How do we actually execute that that production on the shop floor? And so what I've got here is I've got the shop floor insight interface on the screen and it just runs in the browser here. And what it's telling me to do is scan my badge to log in. So I'm going to scan, my ID badge, like I showed in that PowerPoint there. I'm going to just scan my badge to identify myself to the system. And so what it does is it comes up and shows me, yes, this Mark H guy is logged in, and here's all the activities he's performed today. It's basically my time card, and it's empty because I haven't done anything yet today. All right, so now what I'm supposed to do is tell the system what I'm going to be working with. So to do that, I simply come in, I scan one of the barcodes on the traveler. With a single barcode scan, it tells me what operation I'm on, the work center, the production order number, the line number, all those sorts of things, and I'm good to go. I can override the work center if I want. If I started this work on a different machine center or work center, I could change that by scanning a different barcode. But really, that's all I have to do. Scan one barcode, and I've now told Business Central that this thing is in progress. So the planner inside Business Central or a salesperson inside Business Central can look up this order and see exactly who's clocked in, how much time has elapsed on it, all of those sorts of things. It's all real time. Okay. Now, a couple quick things. I scanned in as a specific employee. If you're in a situation where you have a group of employees that are managed by a supervisor, you can set that up as well. So the supervisor can scan in as the group, and everybody in that group will be managed essentially by that one supervisor scanning the single barcode. You can also have anonymous groups where, you know, I've got 10 people on a packaging line. I don't need to keep track of their time individually. I just want to know when I'm doing this work that there's 10 people doing this work. So you can do that as well. And then we can also scan in or clock in as machine centers or work centers. So if we need to capture machine time independently of labor time, we can do that as well. So if you have equipment that runs unattended and those sorts of things, we can capture that time as well. All right, but back to what I'm actually doing here, the typical scenario. I scan my badge, I scan what I'm working on, and then I go off and I do my work. The screen will lock after a certain period of time, or if I like, I can scan my badge again to lock the screen. Now I go off, I do my work, I come back a little while later because I'm finished that particular task. I unlock the screen again, and then I scan the next thing that I'm working on. And as soon as I did that, it clocks me off my previous activity. So it makes it extremely easy to capture that labor time on the shop floor, right? I'm always only scanning 2 barcodes maximum. You know, if this was a terminal that was dedicated to my work center, I would just leave it unlocked all day. And then all I'm doing is scanning 1 barcode every time I'm changing activities. So it makes it extremely easy. I don't have to look up production orders. I don't have to search for anything. I don't have to type anything on the keyboard. I just go beep and I'm done. 1 beep and that's it. And it automatically calculated that elapsed time. I can set it up like I've got here where I could actually edit that time if I really wanted. So if you want to allow the employees to edit their time, that's great because you might be in a situation where, you know, they work on 1 or 2 things all day. So at the end of the day, they might just scan the thing they worked on and type in, yeah, 4 hours on this and 4 hours on the other thing. So you could set that up. That's great. Or you could disable that editing and only the supervisor is allowed to change that time if you like. Okay? But we can set that up. And again, it clocked me off this, and this happens to be in hours. If you have shorter operations, you might want to change that unit of measure to minutes or something like that to make it easier to read rather than 0.04 hours. You might have 5 minutes or whatever that works out to be. And that can be set up per employee or per work center or whatever you want to do. Now, the barcode that I scanned here to indicate the next activity, that says sweeping. So I scanned a barcode that indicates I'm doing a non-productive activity. And that can be anything you like. That can be cleanup, that can be waiting for work, that can be toolbox meeting, that could be whatever codes you want to set up to track that time. Now, you don't have to go to that level of detail if you don't want, because you know, you might not care what they're doing if they're not doing production activities, but it makes it very easy to capture that detail, and now you can report on it. So you know what people are actually doing out on the shop floor. Are they doing a first aid? Are they waiting for work? You know, where are your bottlenecks? You can do all sorts of analysis, and it does make it very easy for them to do. They're just going beep, and you know exactly what they're working on, and it's pretty simple. All right, so, oh, and one last thing, I lied, 2 last things. When I scanned this other activity, it clocked me off that production order. But you might say, well, I've got people that work on 2 things simultaneously. I've got an operator that runs 2 machines at the same time. No problem. We can enable that as well. So you can have 1 person running 2 production orders simultaneously. And we can also do batching. So you might have 10 different production orders that are being worked on simultaneously. Maybe they're going into a dip tank, or they're in a laser cutter or something like that. I can scan all of those production orders in, do the work, and then clock off that batch, and it'll split that time across those production orders proportionally based on quantity or time or whatever setup that you use. So we have a lot of different ways that we can capture that time against production. All right, now let's say you say, yeah, that's great. We want to capture that actual time because we want to do the analysis. We want to see our actuals versus expected. We want to see all this detail, but we don't want paper on the shop floor. We don't want people scanning barcodes necessarily. Okay, no problem. So what I'm going to do is I'm still going to scan a barcode, but I'm going to scan somebody's badge here to switch to a different employee. So now I'm switched over to Linda. And by the way, you can set it up so that you can just type in the employee ID rather than scan a barcode. But we like scanning the badge. There's no data entry. People don't have to use a keyboard. They don't have to touch the mouse, anything. All they're doing is grabbing that barcode scanner and going beep. So I scanned the badge for Linda, and now I see Linda's interface. So the user interface, like what's shown on the screen, can be controlled at the user level, at the group level, at the work center level, whatever you want to do. And when Linda clocks in, she doesn't see her activities, her time card for the day. What she sees is a dispatch list. So this is all the activities that are coming up at her particular work center for the day. So I've actually got this thing filtered down for Linda. When she comes in, I've got it filtered down to Work Center 100. So she's only seeing the work that's coming up at this particular work center. And you can see there's a whole bunch of other information we can show in this view. But so Linda comes in, she scans her badge, she opens up her terminal, and she sees all the work that she's supposed to do for the next hour or day or week or whatever filters you want to set in the system. And from here, she can see what's being worked on, what isn't. She can choose something to work on, tap on it if you have a touch screen, or use the mouse and keyboard, and tap clock on to actually start that work. So instead of scanning a barcode, she's got a list of things she can choose from, click on it or tap it, and tap clock on to start that work. So you don't need paper in a case like this necessarily. You can also have supervisors do assignments. So you can pre-assign the work to individual employees. So maybe I've got 10 people at this Work Center 100. If I want certain people to be working on certain tasks, I can come in there and assign those tasks to those individuals. So when Linda comes in, she can see all the things that she's supposed to focus on, pick what she's working on, clock on, and we can see if it's being worked on in the shop or not. Okay, so that's sort of a tabular dispatch list. It's showing me, in a grid form, text-based form, everything that's coming up. We do also have the ability to show this in a more graphical view. So I'm going to switch over here, and I'm just going to log into this as an employee. I typed in an ID there, and I'm going to come into this view here. And what this shows me is graphically all the work that's coming up at my particular work center. So I can come in here and see, if I'm at Work Center 130 or 120, here's all the work that's coming up at my particular work center for the next day or week or whatever, Zoom level you want to set and whatever time frame you want to set for that view. And this is nice because I can again see sort of in a graphical form all the work that I need to accomplish. And I can click on this or tap on it if you have a touch screen. It highlights all the other operations for this production order in green, so I can see the predecessor and successor operations for it. But I can choose this guy and hit clock on and start that work. So now I'm not seeing it in a tabular view, I'm seeing a nice graphical view to show me what's going on. And the nice thing about this view is it gives me the ability to turn it into a bit of a dashboard. So I can change the colors on any of these blocks, any of these operations, based on the status within Business Central. Pretty much any field that you have on the routing, on the production order routing, you can use to change the color or the style of these blocks. So for example, if something is starting late, I could turn it orange, right? If it hasn't started before its scheduled start date, I could turn it orange. Or, if it's missing material, if I have a custom field there to flag that this production order is missing material, I could turn that red. I can't start that because it's missing components. Or maybe I have a custom priority field, right, that I've added for this particular order. Maybe I turn it pink or something if it's high priority. At any rate, you can set whatever color rules you want based on whatever criteria you have within Business Central. You can also change the text that's shown on the status bar and in this pop-up, so that just by selecting that, we've got a good overview of what has to happen for that particular operation. If we need more detail than that, we can come in here and we can look at the bill of materials. So these are all the components that are required for this particular production order, this particular operation. We can also look at work instructions. So if I have any details about how I need to execute that particular activity, I can show the work instructions. And we can also look at the picture if that's useful for anybody, and record links. So this is any linked documents. I'll talk about that in a moment, and quality inspections and a whole bunch of other stuff. So in a view like this, especially if we have the color rules turned on and everything else, this is a great overview dashboard for anybody working in the shop. They can come in, they can focus on exactly what needs to be done based on color or based on, you know, just the time that they need to work on it. They can tap on it, they can see all the details, and then they can just hit clock on to actually start that work. And it's as simple as that. Okay. Now on this one, I've changed the colors. My color choices are always kind of ugly, but again, you can set the colors on all of these things to highlight things that are active and inactive and all those sorts of things as well. All right, so that's basically it. So I can use that graphical view to clock on, clock off to see a dashboard. I can use a tabular view to do the same thing, except I see a text-based one. Again, if you want to use the mouse and the keyboard, I could come in here. If I want to search for a specific, you know, operation, I could type it in by description or by production order number or whatever you want, and choose it that way. Okay, so for me, the barcodes make a lot more sense because it's kind of like the old Roadrunner cartoons. I go beep, beep, I run off and I do my work, right? It's really easy. There's no chance of choosing the wrong thing or typing in the wrong information. I just go beep and away I go. But if you do want to go more paperless on the shop floor, we've got that capability as well. All right, let's go back to this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to scan my badge here again, and it's going to take me back to my time card to show me everything that I've done so far today. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to scan another production order, and we'll talk a little bit about some of these other things that we see here. So again, the work instructions, you know, gives me detail about what I'm supposed to do on this particular production order. You know, customer specific instructions that you want to put on the order, and operation specific instructions that are your standard, you know, assembly instructions or whatever work instructions you want to convey to the employees. The bill of materials here, again, this could be informational only. I could come in here and see what I need and what I haven't consumed yet, all those sorts of things. And I can actually do point of use consumption. So if I want to come in here and record the consumption for each individual component, I can do that. And I can also record scrap quantities as well. So if I've, you know, actually used 11 of these instead of 10 because I'm scrapping one, I can actually record that information here as well. This is also very useful if you have serial numbers or lot numbers that you're doing point of use consumption of. So if I grab something off the shelf that has a serial number, I could scan in that serial number or type in that serial number right here to record that usage from the components view. Okay, and then I hit register. That goes into Business Central immediately. We can either post it right from here, or we can have somebody review it in Business Central and post it. Similarly, consumption, we can also do output. And the output allows us to do a few things. We can do intermediate output, so your WIP output, or we can do the full finished goods output with serial numbers and quality inspections and all of those sorts of things, selecting a binned output to whatever you need to do, we can largely handle through the output. So again, you know, choose what I'm working on. I can do my consumption, I can do my output, I can look at work instructions, I can record scrap, I can do all that kind of good stuff. Now let's say the work instructions aren't quite enough. You know, I've got more detail I need to convey to the employee than the work instructions. And this is also good if you want to go paperless, because again, I can show these record links. And these links are, you know, any documents that I've attached to the item card or to the production order. And again, we're focusing on production orders here, but we can do jobs, we can do service orders, we can do fixed assets, and we can do, you know, this non-productive codes. But in the case of production orders, I can have these diagrams linked at the item level or at the production order level, and I can click on this and it'll open up that PDF. And that could be any type of document. It could be Excel sheet, it could be a video, it could be a SolidWorks drawing, it could be whatever you like, linked in here. And again, if you're using Doc Extender in Business Central, you can just drag and drop those drawings into the item card if you want, and then immediately they're available here on Shop Floor Insight. Okay, because it's all real time. So we've got that capability as well to convey additional information to the employees. And the last thing I'll talk about on this part is the quality inspections. So the quality inspections, what that does is it allows me to come in and basically build an entry form to capture additional information for this item at this operation. Okay, so you can set up inspection forms for different operations, different items, different work centers, whatever you like, and assign those within Business Central. And really all that lets me do is define additional pieces of information that I want to enter as I'm doing production. Or if you have a QC person, let's say I do this production, I was on, this chain assembly thing here behind the window. I was doing that now, a QC person comes up behind me to verify that I did it right. They can open up this screen and enter all the values. So I created one here, just a data entry form called generic, and I set the descriptions to be sort of the data types that I want to enter, but these would be things like length or width or ID or OD or weight or viscosity or current draw or whatever type of information you need to capture to validate that that operation was completed appropriately. Or just any additional information you want to capture, like maybe I just want to capture how hard it was. It was hard to do, right? Any of those sorts of things. So this could be a serial number of a tool you want to capture that you used, or any type of additional information. And you can set up whatever you like. You can have drop-down lists. You can look up to other tables within Business Central, whatever you want to do. The nice thing about it is you can also set tolerances and rules for pass-fails. So you'll notice here it says between 3 and 5. I put 35, so it's going to be a fail. If I put 3, it's going to be a pass. So you can use that to do quality reporting. You can go in and look, how many times did this particular item fail, or what, attribute did it fail on, what test did it fail on, regularly, those sorts of things. So there's lots you can do. You can go in there, you can look at the data, you can export it to Excel or bring it into Power BI, and you can do a lot of analysis based on this type of quality capture. Last thing is we can do it by lot number and serial number as well. And that's basically it. So I've got an entry form that I can enter additional data at an operation or an item level. All right, so that's a little bit on the quality side. Now, in keeping with the quality theme, one last thing is being able to capture rework time. So that's really important. Rework is very expensive in a shop environment, as you probably already know. But, let's say I did this chain assembly, earlier this morning. I sent it off to the next operation. They've told me it was no good. They brought it back, and now I need to rework it. Now, there's a bunch of different ways you're going to handle rework in Business Central. Some people will create a whole new production order for it. Some people will add new operations, those sorts of things. But if it is that in-process rework, we can do it very simply within ShopFloor Insight, like where I just did it, I sent it to the next workstation, it came back to me because it was no good, and now I need to rework it. Well, again, that rework is expensive. If I've spent an hour doing it the first time, that rework is going to cost me probably 3 hours. An hour to do it the first time, an hour to rework it, the hour of lost time, I could have been doing something more productive, plus all the QC time, material handling time, everything else that goes into me having to rework this component. So being able to easily capture the rework time, like how long did it actually take me to fix this, and more importantly, why I had to fix it, is hugely, hugely important. And we make it very easy. So as an example here, again, somebody brings it back to me. I still want to record my time against that production order and that activity, but I'm going to flag this as this is exceptional time. This is rework time. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to scan a barcode, and I'm going to say it's rework, and I'm going to blame engineering for it. They gave me the wrong drawing, or the work instructions were incorrect, or something like that. So what I've done is I've flagged whatever time I spent on this activity, or whatever time I will be spending on this activity, as exceptional time, and the root cause was engineering. But that could have just as easily been sales. They sold the wrong thing, or it could have been material defect or equipment failure, or Joe in shipping dropped it again, or whatever you want to do. And then the beauty of that is on a weekly, monthly, whatever basis you like, you can report on that and drill down into all the root causes of that rework and narrow down what is costing you money out in the shop, and you can focus on those processes and improve it. Like if it's always engineering giving you the wrong drawings, well, that should be an easy fix. If it's always a material defect, you change vendors. So it makes it very easy to identify what's going on and fix that. And I harp on rework a lot, but it is hugely expensive. It's one of the biggest problems in manufacturing, right? And being able to track that is very nice. Okay, anyway, enough on the rework. I'll stop harping on that. But that's basically it for the system. Now, we've gone through a lot of stuff. And again, all of this is real time inside Business Central. So if I go in Business Central and look at these production orders, I'll see all the time. I'll see what people are working on. You know, all of those sorts of things are there. A couple of things that I'll also mention that I forgot. On this graphical view here, you also have the ability inside Business Central to see what's going on the shop floor on the scheduler. So if I have the right permissions, I can come in here and I can show planned orders, firm planned orders, released orders up here. I don't have that setting turned on, but I can make that visible. And I can actually look at this from a planning perspective. And so inside Business Central, I can come in here, I can see what needs to be done, and I can actually reschedule things. So as a planner, I could come in here and look at it, you know, a month or week in advance or a year in advance, and I can start moving things around. Or if I'm just a shop floor supervisor and I come in on Monday morning and I say, yeah, we're supposed to work on this thing right now, but I don't have the material, I'm actually gonna, you know, move this out and schedule it next week. I'm gonna start it next week, Monday instead. So I can drag and drop it, and you'll notice it reschedules all the other operations accordingly. As soon as I drop that in, it reschedules everything, right? So we can use that as a drag and drop scheduler from an execution perspective, right? Supervisor comes in, needs to move things around, or from a planning perspective where I could look out, you know, a month in advance and adjust my schedule accordingly. Okay, so again, we covered a lot of ground there, a whole bunch of, you know, features and capabilities and things you can tap on and look at. But to take it back to its simplest form, if you just need the ability to come in here and record labor time, it's about the simplest approach you could possibly find. All I'm going to do is walk up to the terminal, scan my badge, scan the activity that I'm working on, and let's do a job for fun, just because. Scan the activity I'm working on, go off, do my work, and I'm done. So it's beep, beep, done. You can't get any simpler than that for actually capturing labor time and those sorts of things. And, you know, sometimes we think, oh, well, labor time, I don't really need to know, you know, the actual labor time. I'm good with the expected, that sort of thing. But this goes well beyond, you know, just simple labor time. Because what if you have a quality issue or warranty issue? With this information, I can go back and look at exactly who did the work, when they did the work, any comments they might have left on that work, any of the quality inspections or, you know, comments they left with the data entry form. All of those sorts of things are available to me historically. So it goes well beyond just capturing the cost of your labor. It does a lot more from a quality perspective, from a warranty perspective, even employee performance perspective. We can handle all that. Anyway, so lots of good stuff. Now, how do you actually get that information out? So you can do all this. Hey, we've got all this information. So let's talk briefly about reporting. So what I've got here is a Power BI dashboard, and the reporting out of the system is actually very easy. Almost everything is out of a single table. So doing any of these reports, you can build your own reports very quickly and easily. We do ship a number of reports, you know, sample reports, very basic reports with the system. You know, they're useful, but they're a starting point for you to come in and build your own analysis as well. So things like, you know, productivity, where you can filter based on employee or production order number or date range, and it'll tell you what your shop productivity is. That's not very good, but, you know, you get all that type of detail in the system. We've also got hours by activity code, and this is where that rework stuff comes in, right? Because if I have the root cause codes defined, I can come in here, click on this drill down, and see what that 53 hours is made up of. Is that engineering? Is that material defect? Is that equipment failure? Those types of things. I can see all that detail. And one note on the equipment failure, on that graphical scheduler, we do actually have the ability to record equipment downtime with the reason code. So you can come in and if something breaks, you can actually record that and block that machine off. And we can report on that as well. But at any rate, this rework thing is good. But this tells me what people are doing out on the shop floor, right? I can see exactly what's going on. Pay code. So if you're using the time and attendance capability, again, we'll calculate overtime and double time or whatever payroll rules you want to define. And send that off to the payroll system. But that's also very useful operational information as well. If I come in here and I look at, how much overtime we've been spending, maybe that's too high. Maybe my target for overtime is 200 hours instead of 400. So now what do? Maybe I now need to subcontract, or maybe I do need to start a second shift or something along those lines. And again, you can filter all of that kind of stuff on the side here. But this gives me the ability to sort of analyze how well the shop is working or how overloaded the shop may be. And the hours by month thing, this is a deceptively capable report, but it's kind of like a pivot table in Excel, and we do have a version in Excel as well. And all this is doing is showing me by production order number the amount of time I spent on a monthly basis, and I can expand that and drill down into individual employees and operations and all that sort of thing. But the nice thing about this is, I can very easily change this to report based on Work Center instead of by production order. So if accounting says, hey, we need to know, machine utilization to calculate overhead or something like that, no problem. I can just drag in the Work Center in here instead, and now I've got the number of hours by Work Center by month or by week or whatever period you want to specify up here. Or maybe from an operational perspective, you want to say, how is my equipment utilization? Do I need to decommission this lathe because I don't use it anymore? Well, this will tell you, how many hours you spent working on that machine over a period of time. So that reporting is all just really a side effect of making it easier for the people on the shop floor. All they're doing out there is scanning barcodes. It's easier than writing out manual time cards, and you're getting all this wealth of information and analysis available to you, again, as a side effect of making the shop floor employees' lives easier. All right, so that's really all I wanted to cover off today. Again, everything is real-time in Business Central. There's a number of things we didn't cover, like the approval step, if you want to engage that, the payroll adjustments, setting up shift patterns. There's tons of stuff the system does. Again, from an operational or execution perspective, we're coming in, we're going beep, beep, and that's how we're capturing our information. And then if you want to get fancy, you can do that consumption, you can do output, you can do quality, you can do the work instructions, you can do the graphical scheduling, you can do the tabular dispatch list. You've got all those additional capabilities you can leverage if you want. And you can mix and match those any way you like. Maybe at a saw, you want them looking at this view here, but in welding or in painting, you want them to scan barcodes. It's really up to you. At any rate, that is hopefully a reasonable overview of a great tool you can use to improve how you leverage Business Central in your manufacturing operations. All right, with that, I think I'm going to pause to see if there were any questions that came through, and if not, I think we'll give you 15 minutes back for your day.
Thank you so much, Mark. We did not have any questions come through, but like I said, I will be sending the recording over, so if any questions come up, feel free to send those over. But with that, thank you so much for everyone attending today, and thank you, Mark, for presenting, and I hope everyone has a great rest of your week.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.